What's going on, Commonwealth, and welcome back to the Bluegrass Soccer Cast, your home for all things soccer right here in the state of Kentucky. I'm your host, Jimmie Martin, and today we have another fantastic episode. Apologies for being off for a week last week. We had a little bit of travel delays and a little bit of some scheduling issues, but we are back this week, ready to rock and roll. So let's go off the top. And I want to kind of pick back up off of a little bit of conversation we had last week, right? So we were talking about promotion and relegation, and we were talking about, how challenging that can really be. So just kind of reviewing what we talked about last week, the investors in some of the upper division leagues and some of those teams don't really want to take a chance on losing that status of their investment. So therefore, they may not be really willing to be taken down a rung, going down the pyramid, and therefore it gives that appearance of a lack of promotion and relegation. We also talked about a consistency issue in some of the smaller leagues, leading to a large turnover of clubs. And we also kind of talked about, there are a lot of other issues out there that are preventing from making this a thing, if you know what I mean. One of those things is the struggles of aspiring semi-professional teams. So a couple of things that I want to dive into this week about this topic, right? But before we do, I want to acknowledge that it is not easy to start a club, right? Like, it is not easy to be a business owner and to start from complete scratch in a arena that could be really packed with teams, or it could be completely barren, and you have to, create this idea of competition and have to create this idea for the community to really rally behind, right? So, I have helped BGFC in the past. I wasn't there when they first started during their successful very first year, but I was able to hop on after that and really kind of help them grow. And I can say from that experience, it is not easy. It takes a lot of time, takes a lot of effort. And if you're not just like flush with cash, right? If you're not an owner of a wealthy business, or you're not the mogul of some tech company, it can be really time consuming and really draining to just constantly be making cold call or cold email after cold call and cold email. So, you have to think about it as like, this is something that you have to really put a lot of time, a lot of effort into. And if you're not serious about it, it's going to continue to have some of those issues that some of the other clubs that we talked about are having, right? So the first thing is, you either have to be, or you have to find a wealthy owner or investor that is willing to equal or exceed your own ambitions, right? So what does that mean? So you've got to find the funding for your semi-professional team, right? It can easily cost in the neighborhood of $10,000 a year or more to start a team from scratch. And that's, some of the basic stuff, right? Like your league fees, your kits, your equipment, and stuff like that. Let alone does that not include your paying your players, which you should pay your players. That doesn't necessarily include field rentals or, getting the proper equipment for the team, if they can't afford it. So all of that every year over multiple years is going to be really, really expensive. And it's going to get more and more as the higher league you go. So if you're looking at, a budget for a USL 1 club, which would be kind of the current bottom level of professional that we have right now, those budgets are going to add a zero to that. They're going to be $100,000 a year at least, But so if you're starting the club, you either have to be, or you need to find somebody who is wealthy and willing to spend the money to create the new brand. But then you have to find good quality, high-end talent in order to succeed on the field, right? So it can be very difficult to attract that level of successful player, due to the little to no pay, which again, you should be paying your players professional, semi-professional, it doesn't matter. You should be paying them. But two, the lack of exposure of the team and for the player, right? If the players don't know that a team exists, they're not going to go to tryouts. They're not going to send in tape. They're not going to make connections through their current coaches and so forth. So you really got to get the name of the team out there, but also as a player, right? You have to take the time to build up your reputation that you are a top quality talent. And that takes time, So then, if you kind of think about it, once you do find those players, right, you have to find them, the ones who are willing to play for little to no pay, and you have to find good, passionate players that are willing to put in the work, even if the result isn't necessarily the compensation that they would be wanting, right? But you can kind of offset that, right? If you look at the collegiate model with NIL deals, which is name, image, likeness deals. If you can help broker some deals with some players to work with one of your investors at a car dealership or something, that's just the classic example. That could be an easy way to give some supplemental income to the players outside of potential game checks that they might get. So finding a wealthy owner, finding quality players, two big challenges. And the next one might even be even harder than that. You have to build your fan base. If you're going to have any level of success, I don't care if it's one championship or 20 years worth of championships, it starts with a strong fan base. So you have to keep the team together in an atmosphere that is highly ambitious and that will really help them build towards getting that fan engagement, right? It's not easy. It's probably going to be the hardest part. While yes, winning helps, that is something you can't bank on. And so you have to look at other things, right? So you've got to send the team out into the community. You've got to go to the local elementary school and read to the kids while you've got your kit on, or at least your jersey on. You've got to go to the local events, the local fairs, the local parades and whatnot. And you've really got to put your name and your players out there to really build that fan base. You've got to give away things. You've got to, really spread your word that you're there. And this will go back to helping that previous issue with finding quality players, right? The more people that know that your team exists, the more experienced and the higher talented players that you're going to attract. So the next big issue is competition, right? And that kind of can come from a couple different angles, right? So if you're in a super competitive environment, let's say you're in a big metro area, say you're in Louisville, just for example, you have to compete with not only other sports, other entertainment, other life responsibilities, but, if you're in a larger metro area, you have to compete with other semi-professional soccer teams, right? So if you're looking at, Louisville, again, just using it as an example, I think that's one of the reasons that the alliance fell through. Metro Louisville has a pretty good hold on that team, on that city. But so does Lou City and all of their academies. They've got all of the top young talent in those. So if you're trying to break into that market with a new semi-professional team and you're not being able to pull from one of those rosters, you are really going to struggle, man. But the inverse of that is also true, right? If you're in Pikeville, let's pull up our far most eastern community here in Kentucky, Pikeville, Kentucky. Beautiful place. There is no other semi-professional team. So you don't have that competition, but now you have to create the competition. You have to create the environment. You have to set the stage. You have to set the standard. And that is not easy either. Out in Pikeville, there's a whole lot to do as far as like outdoor activities, and, just general like connecting with family and being responsible in your community. But as a new a semi-professional soccer team in that city, you've got a lot of heavy lifting to do to set the standard and to set, what things could look like in that community, right? And building a reputation and establishing a team in the local community takes time. I keep saying that this is not something that you can just roll the dice one year, have 300 people at your games, and then every other year you have 10. If that happens, then you missed a step. Something isn't clicking. Your community isn't reacting to you for some reason or another, right? So you got to go back and you got to think about, okay, well, we've got the players because we keep winning, but we don't have the fans. So what are you going to do to kind of increase your fan base engagement and to increase your fan base overall? Another big issue that some of these smaller clubs face is facilities. If you don't own your own stadium or your own training facilities, or you don't have the means to build something like that, you are really going to struggle because rental fees can be costly. And I'm not talking about, going to, if you're in Lexington, I'm not even talking about using Transylvania University's fields. I'm talking about using just the local Parks and Rec. If you're using that 3 nights a week at $50 a night, that's going to add up. It's $150 a week times, I don't know, semi-professionally, you're probably looking at 20 weeks. So, do the math down in the comment, but I think that's, it's $3,000 just in field rentals, right? And if your whole yearly budget is only 10 grand, that's a pretty good chunk of it. That's a third of it right there, gone. But there are other things that you have to consider, right? Your league may have standards. You may not be able to play on an artificial turf. You may not be able to play on a field that has football lines. The league may have specifications on field dimensions and size. You can't play on a super small condensed field. You may have to have a certain PA system or certain capabilities of a PA system. You probably have to have a scoreboard. There's just a lot of things that go into facilities that you don't think about when you're thinking about starting a team, right? You don't think about, does a scoreboard work? Do I have somebody to run the scoreboard? Et cetera. Like it can be costly to have the different people be in those kind of positions. So if you've got a PA and you've got a scoreboard operator, you've got media people, like it gets really expensive, right? So again, if you're trying to stick to that 10 grand budget, you're going to be strapped. And stadiums are going to cost more than just rec fields, So if you're looking at renting a local high school stadium, it could be like $600 a game, Do that for 10 games. That's $6 grand plus your $3 grand for practices. That's 9 of your 10 grand for your yearly budget right there. So now what are you going to pay your whole team off of 10 grand? Good luck. But even outside of your home game, another thing that's going to be really expensive is travel. And we all know travel is not cheap. If you're trying to book a vacation right now, it can be very expensive. I just got back from a trip myself with work. It was really expensive and I didn't have to pay for anything. But, if you don't have a deal with like a local travel company or a bus company or something like that, it can be really expensive to travel. Because if you don't have those services right, now you're passing those costs along to your players, right? So you see where this is going. If you're not paying them or you're barely paying them, plus they now have to get themselves to matches, that's a net negative, for a lot of people. So they may be able to come to the home matches, but they may not be able to get off work that extra time. They may not be able to carpool. They may not be able to, have their family members watch their kids or, anything. There's so many factors that go into it. While yes, carpooling can be a great chemistry builder for a team, want to acknowledge that. If your players can't afford the gas to get to the game, be done. It becomes very inhibitive for the players to go. So, other things to consider for these smaller clubs, right? And this is kind of like the last big thing that I want to talk about. Establishing a brand and a winning culture. that is really challenging, and it's something that can make or break a team, right? We all know that culture is everything. Look at the Miami Heat. That's their whole slogan, Heat culture. Shout out to Udonis Haslem for really setting the standard for that team. But it's true. Culture is everything. If you have a toxic environment, I don't care how much you're winning by. Your players are going to be miserable. Your coaches are going to be tired of dealing with it. Your front office staff is going to be burnt out for having to try and polish up a turd every time they get to a match day. So you've got to really work on that chemistry of the team, and you can't have 15 players on a roster that all want to be the number one striker. You got to build your roster right. You've got to have a front office staff that is not going to demand $100K just for selling 5 tickets every game at $10 a piece. That math doesn't make sense. So you've really got to have the right people and the right culture in your team to make everything happen, right? So from players to coaches to front office staff, it is essential for the long-term health of the club for everyone to be on a similar page. Not to be on the same page. You just have to be on a similar page. Your players need to perform on the field, but they also need to be good brand ambassadors off the field as well, right? So that means going into the community, wearing your merch, wearing their warm-up kits and stuff like that, wearing all of that stuff out so that they can help promote the brand. But while they're there, they got to represent you in the right way, right? You don't want to see your branded materials out at a certain kind of club that, some people like to enjoy. I'll leave it at that. That would be the most awkward way I've ever tried to explain that. But it's true. You don't want to see your brand in places that you wouldn't expect it. So you have to think outside of the box with that, right? Like you want them to wear it out, be proud of the team they play for, but also should probably put some guidelines in there as well. You also have to think about establishing your brand beyond social media. It is so easy, cheap, free even, to get your brand out there on social media. Look at this podcast. I have spent a few dollars here and there on some different equipment, but as far as for our social media, it's only cost me a few hot takes. Shout out to Greenville. But you have to be able to expand beyond social media if you're trying to be a successful club, right? So you can't rely on your few hundred followers to fill your 1,000-seat stadium. Not going to happen. You have to consider other things, right? You have to consider using billboards. If your community has a lot of empty billboard space or available billboard space, that's a great place to advertise. I think you should have some kind of canvassing of the town or painting the town of your certain, team color to where every business in like the downtown area or in like a major entertainment district all have your team schedule or some kind of a poster or something on their window giving you that advertisement. There are hundreds of ways to increase the community connection. But if you're not putting your brand out there and you're not showcasing like, hey, we are affiliated with this company right here that you love and that you want to be a part of. So let's, if you're going to this bar, hey, you'd probably like to come out to one of our matches. You're going to this hair salon, hey, you'd probably like to come out to our match. You got to do those little things. Otherwise, not that many people are going to know and or care. Once you burn out your couple hundred of followers, what's next? That's when you're going to see those down turns in attendance. And, if your players, your coaches, your front office staff don't buy in, you could be in trouble. Because at that point, people are going to start looking at other opportunities. And if your best players leave and, your coaches get upset, you're going to be in a hurt. But if you do get the buy-in from the coaches, the players, the front office staff, you really can hook your community. And that doesn't even require winning. You can have a terrible team, but as long as your players are invested in the community and your coaches are out there doing clinics and your front office staff is, working to canvas or paint your town, your team's colors, you're set. Yeah, winning helps. But if you've got that culture of grinding, irregardless of, what's going on outside of or off the pitch, I should say, then you're in a pretty good spot. But that's where we're going to kind of wrap up this week's Off the Top. I do kind of want to pick up on a similar topic for next week in kind of a part 3 of this promotion and relegation conversation, where I want to kind of look at developing and creating more competitive teams in a region. So I want to look at our state, right? And I want to look at some of our communities in the state that could be primed for a UPSL team or maybe even higher. So make sure you come back next week for that. But now let's go to the bottom line. So we've got 2 matches for most of our teams to talk about since we were off last week. And we're going to start with the big guys, the team in purple, the boys in purple, Lou City. They had a fantastic 1-0 win 2 weekends ago at this point over San Antonio, the defending USL championship team. It was great. Nice way to see them kind of keep the mojo going, right? They won a couple of games in a row. That win against Lexington, the win against Detroit, then they do a big win against San Antonio at home. Nice to see. But then you go to this past weekend's game where they had a 0-0 draw against Charleston. And not trying to bash on Lou City here, but it was kind of a boring game. It was not one that seemed like either team really wanted to win. There was not a lot of creativity by either team. And, there's a lot of just kicking it down to the other team, getting kick it the other way. And it was just kind of boring to me. If these are supposed to be the 2 best teams in the East, currently Charleston 2 points clear of Lou City in first place, then I think the Western Division may have the most straightforward, easiest pathway to a league championship of all time. But if you look at, Lou City just beating San Antonio the week prior, maybe not. And kind of like I mentioned, Lou City still sits in second place. But, they're right within the striking distance of Charleston. If Lou City can pick up a win this weekend, Charleston catches an L, boom, right back in first place where they belong. But let's frolic on over to Lexington now, where they finished up a 3-game homestand, including a huge, massive, first in franchise history, 2-1 victory over South Georgia. And that was big. The stadium was rocking. The teams were excited. And it was literally the best possible outcome that they could hope for. Then we moved to last weekend, which was a 2-0 loss to Greenville. And this was a bad result for Lexington. Lexington had a man sent off in the 27th minute after a forward-facing slide tackle that did not deserve a red card. I pulled no punches about that. That was not red card worthy. Yellow card? Possibly. I'll give you that. Possibly. But it was not red card worthy. And from that point on, the referees just had their hands all over this match. I think I even caught a yellow card at one point. I don't know for what. But they were literally passing out yellow cards like they were standing on Ocean Avenue. Like, it was insane. There were so many yellow cards. After the red card, Lexington being down to 10 and having to face the 11 of Greenville and the 3 officials, there's no way they had a chance. No way. But in the end, Greenville did win, despite their best efforts to waste every possible second of that match. Even to that point there, the the officials kind of acknowledged that Greenville was trying to waste time by adding 9 minutes of extra time to the second half there. So I don't know. It was not what Lexington expected in any way, shape, form, or fashion. If you look at some of the comments from their coach after the match, but it was just not the best day for them. So I'll be really interested to see what happens, when they go to Greenville here in a couple of weeks, to see if those same officials are reffing that match, or just to kind of see what happens, if it's a full 11v11. But hop on over to the women's league now, the NWSL, where Racing Louisville had two West Coast matches. They had a 2-2 draw against Angel City, and this was a really nice comeback draw for the ladies in lavender, as at one point they were down 2-0. Angel City, one of the probably the highest investment firm for that team versus Racing Louisville. Then shifting to this past weekend, a less than desirable 0-2 loss to Portland Thorns. The loss was the first time that Racing Louisville has lost this year, or this season, I should say. I guess calendar year too as well. That game, Portland got 2 goals early, and it was pretty much over. I think by the 30th minute, they were, Racing was already down 2 goals, and it was just, Providence Park is not a place you can go down 2-0. I don't care who you're playing, and get a victory out. But, Portland is really good, and they're probably the best team in the NWSL, so this loss may not be as bad as we think it could be. And with that, transition over to the semi-professional ranks, where we had Pumas Premier out of Paducah/Mayfield. They had 2 matches over the last couple weeks. They lost 2-0 to the defending UPSL Kentucky and Tennessee Premier Division champions, Beeman United. And then they did have a win. They beat the Midwest Hooligans 3-2, which was a really nice win for them. Considering right now they're still outside of the playoffs, but we have several weeks to go. And that win really puts things in an interesting perspective within our state, right? So if Pumas was to knock off BGFC in a couple weeks when they play on May 21st, Pumas could be really primed for, getting that 4th or 5th playoff seed. It seems like for that division, the upper tier, the St. Louis City Academy team, the pre-college developmental team, Beeman United, that seems to be a solid top 3, right? But from there, things get kind of interesting, So Pumas getting themselves a nice victory over Midwest, and I think it'll really come down to that matchup on May 21st against BGFC to kind of see who sneaks in at potentially the 3, 4, 5 seed to kind of round out those playoffs. But with all of that, we're going to move to our last segment today, our interview segment. This week we had the head coach of my Murray State Racers, Mr. Matt Lodge, where we talked about all things collegiate soccer and how the races are looking heading into their spring and fall season. So take it away. What's the vibe around campus right now?
I think everyone's about to gear down for spring break next week, so hopefully everyone's going to be safe and make some good decisions over spring break. But yeah, starting to gear down. Last couple of days of practice for us, and some sports around campus are wrapping up with their season, and obviously you got baseball and softball kind of in the middle of theirs, so a little quiet around campus this week.
Yeah, well, especially quiet, and it's a little bit odd to be quiet because our racers aren't playing basketball anymore. I'm not used to this, Coach.
No, they got, I think they've done earlier than they want, but I think both men's and women's did a fantastic job in the new conference and competed well. I think everyone sees the competition, but I think for us especially, and I know other coaches are saying, it's the travel that made the biggest difference, I think. You're not driving 45 minutes to UT Martin, you're now flying to Northern Iowa and Des Moines and Chicago, so it's a bit of a difference, but we'll get used to it.
Well, I'm relatively familiar with those Missouri Valley schools because I've both worked outside of Chicago, and I did for my master's work, I did a couple of projects with UIC. And then I also lived in Iowa for a time, so I'm very familiar with like Drake and northern Iowa and stuff like that. So it is a bit of a travel from Murray to get to those places.
It is when we don't have, we don't have a international airport any closer than Nashville. So it could be a bit of a problem, but I think, we drove this year, the soccer team, we drove to Chicago, and I like it. I think it's good team bonding, and, just makes those trips a little more last a little longer, which again, I think is good for the team bonding.
On a bus, though, that's what, 8 hours, 9 hours?
Chicago was 6.
Was 6. Okay. All right.
We go to Oklahoma this year, but we'll fly to that one. I'm not trying to drive 9-10 hours to Oklahoma.
So you're playing the Sooners, huh?
Yeah, they came to us this year. And then
how did I miss that?
Yeah, we played them in the fall. It was a good game. We had a tough non-conference, a lot of travel, and then I don't know who made our schedule that tough, but I learned my lesson. Yeah, we played Oklahoma on a Sunday afternoon. And it was really, really tough game. We could have gone 1-0 up early on, and we didn't. That changed the game, but it was good. It was a good experience for a lot of younger players. Play some Power 5 schools and things like that. I always like to do that.
Right. Now, I did see you all play this year. And I am completely off my script at this point. Like I am all over the place. That's nothing unusual for our listeners. I did see you all play here at Western. So talk to me about what that matchup and that kind of rivalry between you and the team here at Western. What does that mean to your team?
I think Jason does a fantastic job there. They're always a solid program in Conference USA, and I think the last couple of times we've played them, it's either been a draw, whether it's spring or preseason. We've not played them in regular season for a while. But yeah, with us both being in state, we often recruit same kids, same clubs, and a lot of our players know a lot of their players. So there is that, that rivalry and that just, I guess the bragging rights. But when it's preseason, you always like to get, a number of players on. So there might be spells of the game that are a little more intense than others, and I think we did a penalty shootout this year at the end just to give our players some experience in that.
So fun fact, I left before that was like finally decided because I saw the teams were about to shake hands or whatever, so I bolted because it was raining, right? And I missed the shootout.
It wasn't anything serious or anything. It was just kind of we were able to get some players in, and we got all 3 of our keepers to play. One came in for the shootout and stuff. So I think it's just a nice way to, you don't get to practice penalties under any kind of pressure. You can do it in practice, and then you won't take penalties for 3 months until tournament play. So it was just nice. I think it was Jason's idea. I agreed it'd be a nice way to kind of, for us as coaches, to see who would our 5 takers be come real time. So it was different, but it was definitely beneficial, I think. Well, saying that, we missed 2 penalties during the season, so I guess it wasn't.
Oh, well, no. Yeah, at least you had a practice at it.
Yeah, exactly. So we did score a penalty. We played UNA in the spring game on Sunday, and we scored a penalty in that game. So
I did see that result. I don't know how I missed the Oklahoma one last year because I would have went for that.
Well, I've got we've not released the schedule yet, but we have we've got a pretty big team coming in on a Thursday before we go play Oklahoma on a Sunday. So,
is it a team that wears blue and white?
It may be.
Oh, let's go!
That's why I wish we had some lights so we could get it on a night game and get a good crowd. But I think even still, just having some teams that again, Oklahoma in the past we've had IU come and Ole Miss, to have those teams come to our place is, I think speaks volumes of what we're trying to do here and kind of our national name.
Yeah. Oh, who is that coach?
This is Geordie. I'm a Newcastle fan.
So okay. Oh, look at that. So Newcastle was your team growing up then? Because you're from Doncaster?
Yeah, I'm a Donny lad, but yeah, I'm from Newcastle. I'm not from Newcastle. Sorry, I
was like, wait,
Newcastle. Me and my cousin, one of my best friends growing up, picked Newcastle early on. We, my dad and my brother are Sunderland fans.
Oh, okay.
So
did they like the documentary?
Yeah, they like Sunderland, which obviously they fell off the face of the earth lately, which is nice for us. And we're like the richest team in the world, so
Yeah,
we're on the up.
beautiful stadium. Oh my God.
Yeah, they're going to do some renovations apparently too, and some training ground upgrades. So
I don't know how you can make it any better.
no, well, I like how they've done their business. They've not gone out and just gone for Mbappe and Messi. They've gone and bought young players or players that they're going to build off in the future. So it's been a fun project to watch. Eddie Howe's done a great job.
So, we'll kind of use that as a pivoting point because I've always liked my audiences to get to know our guests more as people, more so than accomplishments and stuff like that. But, talk to me about what role, especially in England in what the late 90s, early 2000s, what was that like growing up in that such soccer-rich culture?
I think it's just everyone plays. Football or soccer growing up. So you didn't really have a choice. But the only choices you had was you either played for a professional academy, which is what I did, or you played for your local team. Sorry, I got my 2-year-old here with her iPad.
No, you good. Coach, you're a busy guy.
Yeah, I've got 2 daughters. I've got a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old, and getting the house ready. So just got a bit going on. But yeah, just growing up, I've got an older brother. He played, so I always wanted to try and compete with him and his friends and keep up with them. In England, it's not really a high school sport. You'll have a high school team, but it's just, that's kind of more rec. I think the biggest difference is growing up over here and playing soccer. I feel like you have to have money to pay and play. In England, it's, you don't pay to play. You get picked up, you get scouted, you get the honor of playing and representing your town or whatever it may be, your club. So typically they're handpicked players, so you have to be good to kind of go anywhere with it.
And that's exactly something I was talking about recently with our producer of the show. The model in other countries, especially in like England, it's not pay to play. It's very much like, we will pay you to play more or less, with free stuff and travel.
Which is great for the players, but then when you look at it from a coach's standpoint, so where I'm at now, you can pay thousands and thousands to go, because in England you need to have a certain level of coaching badges, so you can't coach a certain age group unless you're qualified. As those courses are thousands and thousands of dollars to take, but then you don't get paid to coach or paid much to coach. So it's like, well, I'm paying more to get educated and to be licensed. Is it worth doing it? So that's kind of, it's a double-headed sword. Kids have got to pay to play, or coaches don't get paid as much, or very little. So I think there should be some element of cost, but I don't think it's something where people can't afford to do it or get turned away or don't get the opportunity.
Right.
Anything like that.
Well, and the coaching system here in America is very similar, right? Like you have to go and you have to get the different licenses and, all of those things cost. From what I understand, some clubs will cover that cost, but if you're at a high school or something, they're not going to cover that cost.
Yeah, it can be tough. I think most like I say, most clubs will cover it. A lot of colleges will. I'm hoping to continue my education. I know my assistant Paul's just completed his B license.
Nice.
The US Federation. He does a great job, and he's just applied to be a coach educator too. So he's trying to take the instructor course where he can coach the coaches, which is something I'm very lucky to have him, in my corner on my staff. So just learning from each other each day.
Because you all are hosting something during spring break or maybe another time where you're doing like a coach's clinic, right?
Yeah, we just had it this past weekend. We had about 12 coaches come in. You see them all over the country, and I've never been to one or hosted one. And I had a few high school coaches who I've got close with over, the time I've been coaching, and they've asked, hey, would you mind if I bring my staff in? Could we watch a session? Could we do this? And then out came this idea, let's hold a symposium, open it up to anyone. And we got 12 people. It was really good. I think, no matter what level or age you coach, I think you can always share and network. And I learned things from talking to high school coaches, that maybe things I don't have to deal with, but they have to deal with, or how we can take something that we do and adapt it and put it in their system. So it's just good to share ideas. You know, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We'll sit and come up with sessions for our practices, and we're crazy if we think it's never been done before. I think every session's been done, every passing routine's been done, you know. So it's just nice to
100 times over.
Yeah, so it's just nice to share ideas, and I think that's one thing that I pride myself on is I'm open minded. You know, I have a system, a philosophy, and ideas, but you know, there's a reason they call it the beautiful game, but the reason I think it's called the beautiful game is because it's seen so many different ways. There's so many different styles of play, and if all coaches thought the same, it'd be a very boring sport.
Absolutely. And that takes me into one of my questions I wanted to make sure we asked today. Like, talk to me about that coaching philosophy and kind of how do you shape your team?
Well, I'm a big attack-minded coach. You know, I always want to be on the front foot, the aggressor.
That's why I like you, Coach.
Appreciate it. We've had 7 players of the year in 9 years, and 8 of those have been either offensive players or a newcomer who was a forward. So, you know, we're big on providing the firepower. Sorry, you know, can we get after teams? We want to get it forward. We try not to overplay at the back. You know, I think just doing some research for our coaches symposium, I read a lot of articles on in transition and where goals are scored in games. You know, if it's not a set piece, it's in transition. You know, either giving the ball away or just winning the ball up higher up the field, as opposed to building it from your keeper through the back, through the midfield.
Right.
You know, those goals are great, and in theory look unbelievable, and everyone wants to play that way. You know, but on the odd occasion, you score. You know, so we want to be efficient in transition. When we win the ball, can we break within 2 or 3 passes and have a shot on target? Well, we've got a lot of pace up front, which I love pace. And I want confident players that are going to drive at people and take shots and take risks. And then just, you know, while we're out recruiting, we want players that have that mentality of working hard and the winning mentality.
So that's really what you're looking for is, you know, those aggressive players, the people that are going to be, you know, taking not crazy shots, obviously. Like, you're not going to be shooting from half field and expect to make it every time, maybe occasionally. But, you know, so what are you looking for when you're going out on recruiting?
I think it's position specific. You know, obviously we want, in midfield, we want some more technical players who read the game a little better. We might sacrifice some athleticism in there if it means they have a high soccer IQ and, you know, they can fill gaps defensively, get in passing lanes. And then for our wingers, we want a lot of pace. Size really doesn't matter at that point, but then for our centre backs, we want them to be big, strong, athletic, composed on the ball. So again, I think it's all position specific. You want your goalkeepers to be calm, but, you know, secure with their hands, good communicator. So we have kind of a little shortlist for each position and what we look for in that aspect. I think it's really easy to spot a good forward or a good attacker because, you know, they stand out.
Yeah.
The defender and the keeper is hard to kind of, a little harder, should I say, to kind of stand out because, you know, they make one mistake in a game and cost them a goal, and then you automatically see coaches like, no, I'm not interested, cost them the game. Whereas a forward misses an opportunity, it doesn't matter, people forget. So I think it's just having that. And we're also recruiting, you know, 15, 16, 17-year-olds. We expect them not to make mistakes at that age.
Right. I'd never made any mistakes. I don't know about you.
Yeah, no kidding.
So I think that's a great point to kind of pivot and talk about like your home field there. You know, it is quite unique in a lot of ways. So talk to me about what advantages does that give you, but also kind of what challenges does that present?
Our field's kind of on the smaller end. I think it's the smallest it can be. You know, obviously in the NCAA bylaws, it has to be a certain dimension, and I think we're right at the bottom there, which allows us to kind of press, get on top of teams early on. I know when IU came here in 2019, we beat them 2-1 because we knew they wanted to pass and play and build from the back. So we just suffocated them on our smaller field and won the ball up high. And then obviously when you go and play, we went and played them the following year, and that, you know, they have a men's team, so their field's twice the size of ours. So then it becomes kind of a track meet. So you kind of try to play to your advantage when you're at home of you know, having those tight spaces defensively, but then understanding, you know, when we have the ball, we won't have much room, so we've got to move it quicker. Yeah, I love our facility. I love where it's at, the location. We have a fantastic locker room, nutrition room right there.
If people haven't been to that field to see a match, you absolutely have to. Like, it is beautiful. Sit on the hillside, take the afternoon, relax.
Bring your dog. Yeah.
Yeah. I used to live in Whitehall, and then my wife, girlfriend at the time, she lived in Regents, and we would go up to like the upper floor and just watch the matches from like her top floor room. Like, it is beautiful.
That's great. Yeah, we love it. We even anytime a coach visits, even the Oklahoma coach Mark came in here, he was like, "Wow, you guys have got a fantastic little setup here." I was like, "Yeah, we love it. It's really traditional. We have our brick built-in scoreboard, and we added a fence several years ago. Won a few championships, got a fence, added
Put the banners up.
Yeah, the new benches and things. So it's moving in the right direction. Our athletic director does an unbelievable job of supporting our programs. So we're very fortunate to have Nico here with us. He played football here, so he understands what works, the challenges, and everything like that. So everything in between. So we are fortunate to have him.
So you mentioned the athletic department there. How do you and the overall Murray State athletic department, how do they help student athletes balance the demands of practice and games and all that kind of stuff, but also with their academics? What kind of support systems are in place for that?
We have very good people in our academic facility. We have Matt Kelly, who's our associate executive AD. He works with all programs. Mandy and Rachel also work in our academic room where they'll be able to offer players tutoring. We have study hall where players all athletes have access to that. All week. So just having that, I think just having multiple people to go to and not everyone waiting on one person. We have, like I say, three people there waiting to help them with registration for classes, help scheduling around practices, because we typically train in the afternoons. We're looking to move to train in the mornings in the fall. So they're working right now with all our players on their schedules. It's nice to then I'll just say, hey, go do this. They have that help, someone to help them. We have our incoming players who will come in for a summer orientation this summer, and they'll sign up with classes and meet our academic advisors. I wouldn't say hold their hand through it, but they'll at least guide them in the direction.
As a former academic advisor of first-year students, it is a little bit of hand-holding. It is.
Yeah.
Especially that first time, because, nobody at 18, we don't expect you to know exactly how to schedule your classes and stuff. So,
well, I've been coaching coaching college for 9 seasons now, and now some of the incoming players or recruits will ask me questions, and I'll be like, I don't know. You might have to ask someone else in the academic department.
Right. So we mentioned earlier the transition to the Missouri Valley from the Ohio Valley. How do you still plan on keeping some of those old school rivalries with like Austin P, Flush That P, EKU, Moorhead, and even Western, a previous OVC member? How do you still plan on keeping some of those rivalries alive?
I think some of them's quite easy, that they're so close that it's an easy trip back and forth. We'll play P in 2024. We actually have
a weekend in the spring.
We play them coming up soon, April 15th. We'll have them and Beth will come in and we'll kind of do a 3-way. In the spring, you get to have 5 days where you can play, but you can play as many days as you like. So we'll do a couple of smaller games, 60-minute games. That way we can get everyone in, rotated in, and just, kind of give some people some opportunity and also get some people back from injury and get them some minutes under their belt. But yeah, we've got a weekend in the fall where we have both SIUE and SEMO coming in. We just played SEMO a couple of weeks ago. So those ones that are relatively local, it's a no-brainer, if I'm honest. There's some that, I don't want to play again. If I'm honest, SIUE are a fantastic program. They're so hard to play against. But, again, when it's not a conference game, there's a little less on the line. But,
right,
I think they're just a program that we've competed against for so long that it's going to feel like a conference game. And you want those games going into a conference game, so you've been around that mentality and that atmosphere, things like that.
So that road trip up to Moorhead or to Richmond, not looking forward to those.
I'll be avoiding Moorhead, I think, for the time being.
Yeah, you and most people.
Jacksonville, Alabama. I don't think I'll be driving there, but we go to UT Martin. We play them soon. So
right.
Those ones.
I forgot about Martin.
Yeah, P, SEMO, Martin. They're a no-brainer. They're regionally, travel-wise, it's easy trip, it's cheap, it's good competition too, if I'm honest. Again, like I said, we played Martin this year, and it was 2-2, and it was just having that no rivalry of the past games and stuff.
Right.
Players get up for it.
So you moved into the Missouri Valley with Belmont. What has that rivalry been like?
Good. That they're a program that, for me personally, they beat us my first year as head coach. We were this 2 seed. So we got a bye to the semi-final, and they beat us in the semi-final. I think we outshot them 25-3, and we lost 2-1. So it's one of those where, again, that's the sport we play. It's a cruel sport.
Yeah.
So it's one of those, that game still, as my first year as head coach, that's a game that still kind of hurts me today. So anytime we've got Belmont on the schedule, I look forward to that game. They beat us this year too. It's funny that our very first MVC game in history was against Belmont, and it's like we just played them for 9 years.
Yeah.
No, it's good to carry that, because it's a rivalry we take from the OVC and we continue it into the MVC. So it's good to keep that rivalry for sure. And again, another local rivalry. And we'll recruit similar players, or should I say, from similar clubs, and might have the same kids on campus and stuff. So there's always that recruiting competition too.
Sure. So, now fully in the Missouri Valley, you've got an old rival, Southern Illinois, Carbondale. But who are you really hoping to build a competitive, I don't want to say rivalry, but at least a competitive spirit with in the Missouri Valley?
I'd say after this year is Missouri State. They beat us in the final.
Yeah.
I think they're the best. I think they're the best team in the league. They recruit well. Kirk's done a phenomenal job there. He works on the US setup with the scouting for the national team. So he has access to all these good kids, and it's great for the conference, because if they're recruiting that highly and playing at this standard, then we have to keep up. But certainly that I want to compete against the best of the best. And then in the MVC right now, that's Valpo and that's Missouri State.
Well, you mentioned 2 teams there, Valpo and Missouri State. You beat Valpo in the tournament. You were the 8th seed and made it all the way to the championship game against Missouri State. Again, unfortunately, a loss in the 55th minute, letting up a goal there. But how does the team rebound, and how are you using this spring to help prepare for that fall?
I think just getting some people in their natural positions. We had some injuries in the fall, or some issues we had to kind of fix. We had to band-aid a few things until we got some people back. And towards tournament play, we were able to get those players into their we had a freshman called Mary Hardy, who was our top scorer. She made newcomer team. Out of our 22 games? Out of our 22 games, I think she played 13 or 14 at left back in defense, because she had to. And she's naturally a midfielder. Those last 10 games, pushed her into midfield, scored 5 goals in that span. So she's someone, she scored the other night. She had an assist the night before. So she is someone that, again, echoes that. If we can get them in the right place, they'll do their job. Soraya Young's been a defender her whole life. We've moved her up front due to injury. And she lit the MVC up, and I'm excited to see what she does this year again too. She's had a very strong spring so far, and she's coming back for her 5th year, and I know a few schools are worried about that, which is good.
Yes, that is a good thing to have some fear in some of the other teams. What do you think is going to be the biggest strength of the team coming up this fall season?
Some experience, definitely. I think in the fall there was some games we started 5 or 6 freshmen at a time, which is great. I love that, because I think it bodes well for the future. So now we've got those players. I think from the final is we return, out of the starting 11, we return 9. So I'm excited about that. And we've got 2 players that can slide straight in to make up that 11 that have experience. Then you've got 8 freshmen, should I say, coming in. If half of them,
not a freshman, coach.
Yeah, if half of them or more can give you minutes, then we're in a good spot. So I think just having experience and that bitter taste of losing in a final, I think's cut pretty deep. And you can tell every day in training since we've got back, it's been intense. It's been with a purpose, and it's been, we've talked about winning championships. I don't care if we finished 8th. We still want to talk about championships every single year. We made a final.
Right. So you did it last year. You made
45 minutes away from winning a championship there. So that's where we want to be year in, year out.
So what are you all working on as far as like, your biggest weakness or things that you're really trying to improve this year? Obviously, don't give away too many tactical errors or anything like
Just
that.
our defensive shape and our defensive area. I think we cost ourselves so many goals this year from some individual mistakes. So it's just being consistent, not getting complacent and too comfortable with ourselves. But defensively, we need to improve. We've always been a team that have scored a lot of goals and had teams on the back foot, like the Belmont game I had mentioned a few years ago. We outshot teams 25-3. We can't let let a team have one opportunity and kill us off. We have to stay tuned in. So it's been a lot of defensive work and defensive shape. And my assistant Paul's been working. He's kind of our defensive mastermind. He's done a phenomenal job with that this spring. Which has been nice. As a head coach, I think you can sometimes get too involved in sessions, and which means you're kind of looking for certain things. Whereas with a coach like Paul, he can run a session. I can stand on the podium there and kind of spectate and take notes and see things that maybe I wouldn't see if I was running the session. So it's nice to have that overall look and take on things.
Absolutely. So, you'd also mentioned, the incoming freshmen and stuff like that. Are there some players that you're really excited about that are coming into this team? Maybe even somebody just coming back from an injury.
Yeah, we've got, all our returners I'm excited about. And then someone who was injured last year is Haley Hogenmiller. She tore ACL her senior year of high school. So she redshirted last year. She's been back in training. She's looking sharp. We're able to get her a few minutes here and there in the first couple of games. But, I'm excited to get her back. And then out of the freshmen, there's Ava Robertson out of Louisville. Has got some unbelievable pace. She just won a state championship with South Oldham, so she's no stranger to winning championships. Just bags of pace. We've got a right back and left back out of Nashville, Reagan Tate. She's playing at a high level in the ECNL right now out of Tennessee Soccer Club. And she's in a position that we need that more depth. So I'm excited to see her come in and compete for minutes. Then we've got Sammy Wilson and Megan Jeremiah, who are both from St. Louis, who bring a lot of pace, a lot of playmaking ability. And then we also have one of your locals, Hannah Carter, coming in from Greenwood, and she'll do a great job pushing our back four. We always want competition all over the field. And then we've just got a recent commit from Canada, Kate Stordy.
Look at us getting international commits. Let's go.
So we've got Kate coming in, and then we've got McKenna from Columbus, Ohio. She's recovering from a broken leg right now, which she'll be back and raring to go soon. And then we have some competition in between the sticks. We have a goalkeeper, Gigi, coming out of Indiana, who's fantastic. And hopefully we have a senior who will likely start this year. So it's nice to have someone to learn from and take over the reins.
Absolutely. So, Coach, last question for you here, and we'll let you get out of here. Where can people keep up with the Murray State women's soccer team?
I think just on our Twitter account, Racers Soccer, Instagram, same hashtag, Racers Soccer. And then I think the Murray State Racers app, you can keep it with all the sports, and you can download that at the App Store and things like that. So social media these days is the best place to find anything.
And that will do it for this week's episode of the Bluegrass Soccer Cast. I want to thank you all so much for joining me. Really great conversation with Coach. Really wishing them the best of luck as they, kind of move into the summer and into the fall season. I really want to get out there and cover a match. So, Coach, whenever you see this, let me know what kind of your big matchups are. And, for fans of Murray State, like myself, hey, go Racers. Let me know kind of what match you want me to cover, the Austin P match, if they get the big blue team down there, that could be fun to cover as well. So please make sure you stick to all of our social medias, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, at BG Soccer Cast, just to kind of help us grow the platform. Give us a like and a follow on all of those. Make sure you're listening on all of our platforms, Spotify, Google, YouTube, and others. Make sure you subscribe, like, follow, share, do all that fun stuff just to kind of help grow the podcast as much as we can. And this is Jimmie signing off.